Thank you very much, Chair. Gentlemen, you mentioned a couple things today that intrigued me a bit. One, you've focused on supervision and compliance, which is the heart of what you're talking about. FinTrack has 35,000 plus entities that report to them. Now, we know the history of criminals. They seek out exploitation and they don't follow the rules, and they will exploit. They're exploiting the current system, and they will undoubtedly exploit provisions in C-12, right? So there are holes. I was going to call them gaps, but really they're huge holes in the current system where money laundering is a multi-billion-dollar Canadian industry. And so if you had this magic wand and you say, listen, Bill C-12 is a step in the right direction, which we all believe it is, what are some things you can add further that will ensure that the criminals who exploit our current system and will exploit C-12 to its degree will close those holes, close those gaps at least a little bit more? You've proposed some amendments. I think there's still more that can be done. What are your thoughts in the final minute or so that I have to answer that?
Thank you very much. I'd look to our opening remarks. We certainly have worked extensively with the government on changes around enhancing beneficial ownership in Canada, or the transparency of beneficial ownership in Canada. We're also supporters of private-to-private information sharing. As stated earlier, responsible information sharing in the AML space balances the interests of Canadians' privacy with combating.
I'm going to interrupt you for a minute. You speak about compliance, and that's a voluntary act. Criminals will not voluntarily follow the rules. So there's some things extra I think we can do. And from your position, from your vantage point as the banking industry in Canada, there's got to be some more things that could be considered in C-12 to prevent, some more exploitation that will occur. And that's really what I'm asking if I didn't make it clear the first time. So what other things can we really focus on that aren't addressed in your opening remarks or in C-12 currently?
Be inappropriate for me to comment, I think, on the government's choices to put forward certain legislation.
You're here as a witness. And the purpose of bringing witnesses to committee is not about government choice. It's about hearing from the experts in the industry. They can help us as whole of government find solutions, because we're all here in the same team saying we need solutions to this problem. And you guys have a unique vantage point to give us those solutions. So it's not about whether it's appropriate or not. You have ideas. You may not have brought them forward today, but pie in the sky, what is it that we need to see and hear and do in C-12 that we could still possibly do?
I think, as I said, responsible AML information sharing is a key way to balance the privacy of Canadians with strengthening the AML regime to focus on bad actors. I think investment is also important, which we've seen. We have long advocated as the CBA for investment in prosecutorial and investigative powers. This is important. It's key that organizations within the government, and I think there's been a lot of attempts to do this over decades. This is an issue that the government has long been dealing with. Crime is constantly evolving, so investment is key. And we certainly... You're
saying in law enforcement and prosecution.
Sorry, MB Master, that was a very useful segment.
Thank you for the presentation. Now, I come from Vancouver. I represent the riding of Richmond Centre, Maple. So I'm quite familiar with the so-called Vancouver model of money laundering. And one thing we've identified in the past was that many of these criminal activities or money laundering actually went through the currency exchange operations. And we see that quite often if one operator is being red flagged or sanctioned, then they can easily change the name and then to open up another new operation to carry on with the activities. So from your perspective, is this still going on? And also, is the bill's C-12 are going to do anything about interrupting that kind of chain of operations?
The question, it would be inappropriate, I think, for me to comment on specific risks within the money laundering sector, that's maybe a better question for FinTrack. The CBA as a trade association doesn't have line of sight on that level of specificity. What I would say, though, is what's being proposed in Bill C-12 will outline improvements to supervision and enforcement, which, as I think Michael mentioned, are important for reporting sectors as a whole. So we will, I think, with the appropriate amendments to C-12 to target it and create transparency and predictability in its application, help to encourage compliance with the PCML TFA for certain reporting sectors, and drive forward a stronger, more efficient money laundering regime which keeps pace with risk. Risks in the AML space are always evolving. That's why our members invest so heavily in their operations, their programs, their policies, their procedures, and their training to ensure they can detect and deter risk as it changes.
So are you saying that the underlying loopholes that enables the Vancouver model remains open even if Bill C-12 passes? Is that correct?
I don't think that's correct. I simply, be inappropriate for me to comment on that level of specificity. I don't have line of sight on that level of operational information. It, again, is a better question for the government.
What I would just add is that as we look at Bill C-12, I think there's provisions in there that look to help identify individuals involved in the Canadian AML regime from a financial perspective. Those provisions will help identify them so that FinTrack can properly supervise them. There's amendments in here that are asking for greater supervision and assurance that FinTrack is getting information they need in being able to ensure compliance with the AML laws and regulations. And then the requisite penalties for those that are, and with the suggested technical amendments, that those penalties are in place for those who are going to be egregious about not complying with those requirements. And so from all of that perspective, that's why we're very supportive of what's contained here within C-12 with the right technical amendments, so we don't have the unintended impact. All of that should help to strengthen risks as you're identifying through the typology of the Vancouver model or other money laundering typologies. So the stronger identification, supervision of the players within the market, and an assurance that the information they're providing is accurate and meaningful can only help strengthen the regime.
So I also have a question on the effectiveness of reporting. So the banks, submit millions of reports to FinTrack every year, yet only a small number led to investigations. And there's been the criticism that the industry is over-reporting on low-value transactions, yet under-reporting on high-risk areas such as foreign transfers, MSBs, and trade-based laundering. So what is your comment on that?
Some of the criticisms may be over-reporting of data overall, which then makes it, which can lead to a high volume, low value. Not necessarily that there isn't a high degree of reporting. Our members submit millions of STRs to FinTrack over a multi-year period. So there's certainly a high level of investment in that aspect of the regime. I think, again, what we'd like to see here are the technical amendments that we've suggested that will help drive predictability and transparency in application and help to prevent over-reporting. Clarity in regulatory expectations will assist organizations in meeting those expectations properly and also in analyzing risk and focusing their efforts on pinpointing the needles in the haystack and providing reporting to FinTrack. We've also seen other developments in the regime, such as private-to-private information sharing, enhanced beneficial ownership transparency. All of these, again, help to target risk and to lead to a more effective and efficient AML regime.
Okay, good. From your perspective...
Thank you, MP. Sorry to interrupt.
Now, I just wanted to follow up with my previous questions. So from your perspective, how effective is the reporting system right now to FinTrack in terms of trying to interrupt these kind of criminal activities and money laundering in the country? So how effective is the current reporting system, and what kind of changes should be adopted?
It's a reporting system that is constantly evolving and improving. The importance is a regime that increasingly focuses on risk and that encourages targeted reporting to ensure that FINTRAC receives the information it needs to enable prosecutions, and protect Canadians, which is what we're all hoping for from the AML regime, and why all stakeholders participate in consultations and invest in the regime. Overall, we think that recent changes, such as private-to-private information sharing, will help to bolster reporting to FINTRAC, help to create observation of complex risk and complex criminal activities, and ultimately that improves what goes to FINTRAC. So it's an evolution. It's an ongoing iterative process.
Now, I understand that you are representing the banks, right? So you don't want to comment on other money services operations. However, we have to look at the bigger picture. So you are just representing one sector, out of many. So again, if we're looking at the bigger picture, trying to see the continuum of money services business, so where are the loopholes that we haven't addressed since the Vancouver money laundering model has been identified?
I think really today I'm here to speak to Bill C-12, and it would be inappropriate for me to comment more broadly on risk that I don't have a line of sight on. But I can indicate that the changes we're proposing in C-12, again, are minor, and they will ensure that what's outlined in C-12 will help to build a stronger regime and better target risk.
I would just maybe add, though, that the government's recent national risk assessment on money laundering, which the CBA did participate in providing input and feedback on, is probably a good guide to look to where the vulnerabilities are within Canada's AML regime from a money laundering perspective. And I think that, for us, is something that we incorporate within our own institutions' risk assessments that we undertake across the enterprise, as well as when we're looking at our various clients, to help determine the right mitigation controls that we need to put in place to comply with the law, as well as prevent money laundering and terrorist financing here in Canada. And so I think that is the appropriate document to type of look at to see where there may be further opportunities to strengthen Canada's AML regime against the vulnerabilities that have been highlighted in the national risk assessment.
I'm really disappointed that you failed to comment on the bigger picture, right? You just narrowly define yourself into this very small area. But anyway, so I'm going to ask you another question regarding the bank that you represent. Now, we know that there are some changes on new money laundering methods linked to the drug trade, such as crypto layering, funnel accounts, and trade manipulation. So, again, how is the bank sector adapting to those kinds of new methods of money laundering? So what have you been doing, and what kind of measures that have you adopted?
Well, as Mike outlined, the National Risk Assessment has been updated to provide pinpointed information on different types of risks. Banks then invest heavily in their programs, policies, and procedures, and their controls to help target and detect, disrupt, and deter these sorts of activities.
So I would just say it's a continuum. We are always looking to evolve our detection and deterrence methodologies within the various banks to be able to identify these emerging risks and manage those appropriately, and in the end, ensure that we're reporting any suspicion of money laundering related to these emerging technologies or new sectors to FINTRAC, so they can appropriately do their analysis and disclose to law enforcement as required.
So how fast are the banks being able to catch up?
I'm sorry, Mr. MPR. That's all the time we have for that segment.